Personalizing your Windows environment is a great way to make you feel more at home with Windows. You can make it more user-friendly by changing the lock screen or by changing the background wallpaper. A great way to make your Windows more personalized is to set your own account picture with a photo of yourself. Not only does this help you feel more at home, but it's also useful for colleagues who collaborate with you that can see your picture information in collaboration apps. In this video, I'll show you how to set all this information as well as customizing other aspects of your PC settings. Let's take a closer look. I like to customize some PC settings to make Windows 8 a bit more user-friendly and personalized. A good example of this is setting the image that's used for my account ID. Not only is this more user-friendly for me, but it's actually useful for colleagues who collaborate with me using Windows 8 apps, because the apps can display my picture to them when, for example, they receive email from me. To update the picture, I begin by clicking on the Account ID tile, and then choosing the Account Picture option. I can then go to Browse, and use the browser to select the photo that I need. If the picture is not displayed in the folder that you're currently viewing, you can use the drop-down menu next to Files to choose from a selection of popular locations. The picture that I'd like to use is in the desktop folder, so I can select that and then choose Image. This setting takes effect straight away. So if I go to my Start screen, I can see that my profile picture has been updated. The next customization I'd like to show you is customizing the Start screen itself. There's a separate video that deals with rearranging and customizing the tiles. What I'd like to show you now is customizing the color scheme and the background image that the Start screen uses. To do that, we can go back to the personalization settings, and I'll use the switcher to do that. So I move the pointer into the top left-hand corner of the screen, and then click on the switcher tile that appears. I then go to Start screen, and from here we can change the pattern that's shown in the background. You might find some of these designs preferable or distracting. For the purpose of this illustration, I'd like to choose the option to not have any background at all. On the color scheme, you might want to choose a color scheme based on your favorite colors, or perhaps a color scheme that's based on your company's corporate color scheme. Once again, note that as I'm choosing the selectors, the change is made immediately. So I can see how the color accent is applied in the settings, and I can also see if I go back to the Start screen that the background color has already been set and the background image has been removed. The next customization is particularly useful for tablet users, but even if you've got a computer or a laptop that runs Windows 8, you should still find it useful. I'll use the switcher again to go back to my personalization settings and then look at the lock screen options. Remember that the lock screen is displayed whenever the computer starts up, or you lock the screen, or when you've left the machine unattended for a certain amount of time, and then it locks the screen to protect it from unauthorized use. I can now choose from a variety of pre-configured options to display a wallpaper on the lock screen, or I can browse. Maybe I need to add an image of my company logo, or I can click Browse to choose an image of my own preference. The customization that works really well with tablets is the ability to add lock screen apps. Each lock screen app can display a glyph on the lock screen. This is a small icon that indicates some kind of status information. So I can see whether I have any text messages, email, or appointments on a particular day by whether a glyph is displayed or not. I can also add more glyphs. So, for example, I can add one for weather. Adding the weather glyph can give me an icon that indicates whether there are any severe weather warnings for my area. And I can see all this information from the lock screen, which means I don't have to log onto the device to get important information. Finally, I can also display detailed status information. So from the selection of glyphs here that are able to show detailed information, I can choose one. Let's go to the lock screen to see how these settings take effect. We can get to the lock screen by displaying the Start screen. So I press the Windows key on the keyboard, and then on my Account ID tile, I select Lock. Now we can see that the lock screen displays my new wallpaper as well as displaying detailed weather information because of the lock screen app that I added. So now I'd like to log back in and just show you a few more customizations that I can do. And what I'd like to show you is that Windows 8 modern apps have customizations done through a similar method. One of the problems with the modern apps is that they run in full screen and they tend not to have any configuration buttons. So how do I change their settings? Let's have a look at the weather app as an example. So there's no obvious way here to get into the settings to change my temperature between Fahrenheit and Celsius, for example. So the way that I get into the settings is to use the charms. There is a separate video that gives more detail on charms, which you're welcome to review after this video. But for now, it's enough to show you that I can access the charms by moving the mouse pointer into the bottom right or the top right corner. That will bring up the charms bar, and then I choose settings. So I can confirm here that the settings are specific to the weather app and look at some of the configuration options. If I go to the start screen, I can load another app to show you as an example, and I'm going to choose Maps as the second example. So once again, no toolbars or buttons available apart from the zoom controls, but nowhere for me to configure the settings. So I go to the right-hand side, choose a corner, that brings up the charms bar, and then I can select the settings from the charms. So I can confirm here that I'm doing the settings for Maps, and I can go into the options to configure how that app works. So although the options between Maps and the weather are different options, I get into those options through the same method. So although the Maps application and the weather application have different kind of settings, we get into those settings in the same way. Because they're both modern apps, we use the charms bar and we use the settings icon. This is in contrast with the desktop settings, which I'll cover in a different video entitled Customizing Desktop Settings. To review, the Windows 8 environment, specifically relating to your start screen, your lock screen, and your personalization information, can be controlled by clicking on the Account ID button and going into the personalization settings of the PC Settings app. If I'm looking at customizations for specific Windows 8 modern apps, then I use the settings which I get into by going to Charms. It's worth remembering that if you're using a Windows 8 computer that belongs to a company, you might need to have administrative privileges to change certain settings. If you try change a certain setting but you're not able to, talk to your IT department for assistance.